Okay.
Holy Spirit,
You better do it, Lord.
Holy Spirit,
You better get him, Lord.
Holy Spirit,
Before I get him, Lord.
activate.
Hey.
Activate. Let's go. Holy Spirit, activate.
Oh no.
Holy Spirit, activate.
Okay.
Holy Spirit, activate.
Okay.
Activate.
Hey, hey,
Let's go.
they say I ain't saved cause I cuss a little bit, but you're the only judge that I need and that's it. They always in my business cause they say I backslid. They read the Holy Bible but they ain't applying it. So Holy Spirit activate. If you do it right now, that would be great. I ain't trying to smack this chick in the face. Don't you see me down here trying to change my way? So
Holy Spirit,
you better do it, Lord.
Holy Spirit,
You better get him, Lord.
Holy Spirit,
Before I get him, Lord.
activate.
Hey, hey, hey.
You cannot. Okay.
Holy Spirit,
You
activate.
better do it, Lord.
Holy Spirit,
You better get him, Lord.
Holy Spirit,
Before I get him, Lord.
activate.
Hey.
Activate. Let's go. Holy Spirit, activate.
Oh no.
Holy Spirit, activate.
Okay.
Holy Spirit, activate.
Okay.
Activate.
Hey, hey,
Let's go.
they say I ain't saved cause I cuss a little bit, but you're the only judge that I need and that's it. They always in my business cause they say I backslid. They read the Holy Bible but they ain't applying it. So Holy Spirit activate. If you do it right now, that would be great. I ain't trying to smack this chick in the face. Don't you see me down here trying to change my way? So
Holy Spirit,
you better do it, Lord.
Holy Spirit,
You better get him, Lord.
Holy Spirit,
Before I get him, Lord.
activate.
Hey, hey, hey.
You cannot. Okay.
Holy Spirit,
You
activate.
better do it, Lord.
Holy Spirit,
You better get him, Lord.
Holy Spirit,
Before I get him, Lord.
activate.
Hey.
Activate. Let's go. Holy Spirit, activate.
Oh no.
Holy Spirit, activate.
Okay.
Holy Spirit, activate.
Okay.
Activate.
Hey, hey,
Let's go.
they say I ain't saved cause I cuss a little bit, but you're the only judge that I need and that's it. They always in my business cause they say I backslid. They read the Holy Bible but they ain't applying it. So Holy Spirit activate. If you do it right now, that would be great. I ain't trying to smack this chick in the face. Don't you see me down here trying to change my way? So
Holy Spirit,
you better do it, Lord.
Holy Spirit,
You better get him, Lord.
Holy Spirit,
Before I get him, Lord.
activate.
Hey, hey, hey.
You cannot. Okay.
Holy Spirit,
You
activate.
better do it, Lord.
Sorry, keep this going because I don't have much time. I don't have much time here. I love you guys. I love you, ladies and gents. I love you. Hold on one second. I need to get this pulled up so we can get right into it. Please hit the like. Please hit the like. Please hit the like. I love you all. Thank you so much for being here. Absolutely. Of course, we're going to talk about this whole Diddy piece. Why would we not? I know some of you are probably wondering, like, why didn't y'all talk about the guys that just won $100 million from Diddy? Because that was by default. He just didn't show up to court. So that's something that Diddy can fight. So I really don't see what's to discuss. It's not like they were going back and forth to court and he actually like beat Diddy or Diddy settled for $100 million or something like that. That's not the situation. It's totally not the situation. So hello everyone, please hit the like. Please hit the like. Please hit the like. Okay. Welcome back to my show, the SeanDavieWay Show. Today we're going to be talking about Danity Kane's Don Richards sues Diddy in exclusive lawsuit. Watch Cassie and Kim Porter agree and more. Okay. That absolutely did happen. If you don't know who we're talking about, let me put a name to the face to the name. Okay, we are talking about Dawn from Danity Kane. Okay, she was also in the group Diddy Dirty Money. Okay, Dawn is to the right, depending on what side of the screen you're on. She has on the fur, the black and gray or black and white fur on right there. That is Dawn. Okay, she was also in Danity Kane. She's right there in like the middle, if you will, between Shannon and Andrea. Okay, Dawn Richard. Okay, put a name to the face. That's who we're talking about. Okay, she was extremely close to Diddy over the last like 10, 15 years. And she has decided to come forward and sue Diddy for a lot. Whoa. I am a firm believer in everything that Don is saying. Again, Don has been with Diddy for quite some time. We all knew that there was something up with Danity, Kane, and the band, and all of that. We saw a lot of the reverse going on. Before we get into this lawsuit, I would like to say this. I know most people would think like, well, why did you stay so long? Why did you allow these things to go on and you did nothing about it? Again, these people were in fear. Okay. Diddy is a powerful man. And then I want you to pay attention to the stuff that she's listing and saying that happened and even transpired in front of not only her, in front of like record execs and so many other people, of the things that Diddy was doing. So if you're standing in front of someone that's your boss, and has threatened you in certain ways, and then you see him putting his hands on females and all of that right in front of you and everybody else, and nobody does anything, why would you not be afraid? Why would you not be afraid? If he could put his hands on Cassie in front of a whole party of people in a public place at a restaurant in front of everybody, then what's stopping him from hurting me? What's stopping him from harming me? You feel alone. So it's not as easy as people try to make it out to be. Like, oh, well, why not leave? Even when she did, she was basically forced, to return, right? She was property. They all become property. So I want you to pay attention to that, okay? These people aren't being treated like human beings. They're being treated like luggage, if you will. So trigger warning and all of that before we start reading it. Okay, it is a lot. There's a lot of information being detailed inside of here. And a lot even has to do with Cassie, okay? So her name is Dawn Angelique Richard. Okay, people say Richard, but it's actually Richard. Known professionally as Dawn Richard, is an American musician, singer, songwriter, and performer. She gained widespread recognition as a member of the girl group Danity Kane, formed by defendant Sean Combs, and later transitioned into a key member of Mr. Combs' band Diddy Dirty Money. Okay, so she's been in two groups of Diddy's, Danity Kane and Diddy Dirty Money. Defendant Sean Combs, a once celebrated hip-hop mogul popularly known by his stage names Puff Daddy, Puffy, P. Diddy, Diddy, or Love, skyrocketed to fame, and they're like, yeah, we know all that, we don't care. Mr. Combs' namesake temper frequently manifested in musical illness. Mr. Combs regularly hurled objects in fits of rage, often throwing items such as mobile phones, laptops, food, and studio equipment across the room or at people. On numerous occasions, Miss Richard witnessed Mr. Combs brutally putting his hands on his girlfriend, Cassie Ventura. Okay, his persistence abuse included strangling Miss Ventura, striking her with his hands and with objects, slapping her, ching her, items at her, including a scalding hot pan. Okay, so we're going to get into that into the lawsuit too. She watched Diddy throw hot food on Cassie, okay, frying in the pan. He took the pan and threw what was in it on the girl. Okay, so trigger warning, trigger warning, trigger warning. We're going to be getting into that too. On many occasions, Miss Richard tried to intervene, offering Miss Ventura support and encouragement to leave Mr. Combs. Each time, Mr. Combs learned of her efforts to help Miss Ventura and became enraged, threatening Miss Richard's life with statements such as, "You want to die today? I make a go missing and I end people." Okay, so these were the things that he would say to her when she would encourage Cassie to leave him. When she would encourage Cassie to be like, you know what, you don't need to be with him. You deserve better than this. Like, nobody deserves what you're going through. Having little coachy conversations like that to try to coach her out of this violence. And when Diddy would find out about it, he would become enraged. He would become enraged to the point to where he would tell her, like, look, I will you. Like, I will end you. I make this disappear. And again, this is a lot of the things that other people like Cassie, even Rod, and others have came forward and said that he says and said to people. So 100%. Yeah, right in here. Right in here. Right up there. 100%. Right up here. The thing about it is it's different when one person is coming forward saying this, right? Then I will understand somebody saying like, oh, was anything recorded or was anything this or anything that or any like proof beyond this? When you have multiple people, not multiple, like tens of 20 to 20 people coming forward stating the same things, an experience is a person's truth. So if you are experiencing things with other people, Cassie comes forward and says all of this stuff happened to her, right? And she only named certain names, but again, that was a small piece of her lawsuit. Cassie's actual lawsuit probably would have been like 400 or 500 pages. You know, she would have put everything that happened inside of the lawsuit, would have been really long. But when you know you're going to win, you don't need all that. You don't need all that. So, and then another thing is too, you have viral videos like what happened to Cassie at the hotel. What more proof do people need? I mean, that should be enough. Not everything's going to be recorded. It's like asking our victim, did they record it? That's crazy. That's a crazy question. To go and say that somebody R-worded you, and then a person say, well, did you record it? Did you record any of it? Did anybody record it? It's the same thing while somebody being pounded on. It's like, why should Cassie have to have recorded it for people to believe her? The allegations that Cassie came forward with about Diddy, he's too big of a person to just make allegations. Like, no, because of the result of what will happen with you not being honest. Diddy, again, is a very powerful person, a very powerful man, can make people disappear and other things. He's even shown his power to these people to keep them in fear. So if you are petrified of someone or petrified of what they'll do to not only you, your family and whatnot, how can you say something? Dawn saying something now, and the other women and men that have came forward and stated their experience with Diddy, they're doing it because his power has been removed. It's been removed. Him selling that lawsuit with Cassie was one of the worst things he could have done if he was trying to convince people he was innocent. It's one of the worst things he could have did. He should have fought that tooth and nail. He did not. He felt like he could throw a little bit of money at it and then walk away from it, and then all would be no, not at all. His power is being removed. So now people feel comfortable coming out and saying something now that there are, not that there are eyes on the story, not that there are people that believe these people. A lot of them don't want to come forward because they don't feel that they will be believed. It's not, a lot of them don't even care about the fear part no more. You know, it's like they don't live their lives. A lot of them are older, you know, and whatnot. So it's like, it's not a big deal. Like you said, you're going to do this, you're going to do that to me, like whatever. I'm still going to get my story out there because what you did to me was wrong. Now it's that people believe them because and not the cancel culture to cancel people like the predator, more so the cancel culture that will cancel you just because you are coming forward to tell your truth on someone that other people love. You know, that culture is what scares people into hiding. Is what makes them not want to say anything at all. When you see all of this negative stuff that people are saying, like, oh, you lying, you cap, this a money grab, you just trying to this and that, you broke, your career didn't go where it wanted to go, da 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 da. Why would one want to come forward and speak? You know, why would one want to keep, you know, want to say anything at all? You know, and Dawn is not the only one. There are plenty of women and men that are still afraid, you know, to say something because all of this stuff going on around Diddy, Homeland Security investigations and all of this stuff and whatnot. I can drop the link in the chat if y'all want to go read the lawsuit on y'all. I know a lot of y'all is on Hooked on Phonics, so y'all need a read to y'all because y'all don't read good. But this is what you do in a show when you set up a topic. You explain to the people because not everybody knows what's going on. Not everybody knows who Dawn is. Not everybody knows who Diddy is. Not everybody knows the allegations. Some people are literally day one coming in and having no idea. of what has happened to who, why. They just hear certain things or see certain stuff, but don't really take time to, to read it or listen to what people are saying. So a lot of people be literally today's old coming into the situation. So I'm setting it up before I read. If you have a problem reading, take that up with your teachers or your parents. That has nothing to do with me, but this is my show, and I'm definitely going to run it how I want it to run it. So, anyway, before I was really interrupted by, the non-legible. Yeah, so I think that this is why, because people, their main questions be like, well, why now, and whatnot. It's not a why now. Who knows if a lot of these artists have sued him before. And these lawsuits were swept underneath the rug, not even submitted, because he has so much power. So when people say like, oh, well, they're only doing this now because of Cassie, or they're only doing, no, a lot of these people have been suing him for years. And every time, like Natiana, I believe that's her name, the one that got pop out in the face by him at the club, her whole lawsuit against him was put underneath the table. A lot of people didn't even know, one, that the woman ever got pow by him, and then two, that she sued and won for it. A lot of people don't know that. A lot of people have no idea that there was even a lawsuit at all, because of the power that he has to make sure that these things are not shown to the public. So is this Dawn's first lawsuit? Has there been other women in Danity Kane that have sued them? Has there been people in the band that have sued them? Have artists like 702 and others, Lil Kim, Notorious B.I.G. was rumored to be suing Bad Boy Records and whatnot before he left with Junior Mafia and whatnot, but we have never seen the lawsuit, but allegedly he was suing. All types of stuff. But we don't hear nothing about it. Doesn't mean that it didn't happen. It doesn't. And it doesn't need to be on camera in order for it to be true, because even when it is, there's still people going around here saying that Cassie's lying. And there's literally a video to prove that she is not. But it shouldn't have took that. It really shouldn't have took all of that for that to have happened. So that's very unfortunate, but let's keep reading. Compounding Mr. Combs' violent acts and threats, he flagrantly exploited Miss Richards' musical talent as a singer and writer while withholding her rightful earnings, stealing her copyrighted works, and subjecting her to years of inhumane working conditions, which included groping and false imprisonment, among other violations. For nearly a decade, Mr. Combs manipulated Miss Richard with mantras that submission to his depraved demands was necessary for career advancement, instilling in her the belief that such abuse and exploitation were required for female artists to succeed in the music industry. So that right there is, I couldn't agree with her more. He does it to everyone, literally making the band on national TV go and walk for cheesecake, go and walk blocks and blocks and blocks in the freezing cold overnight, in the middle of the night, morning, I should say. That is abuse. What does that have to do with having a record deal? Why? How? And they went to go get him a piece of cheesecake. What does that have to do with making it big? Who has to do that now? If he was looking for an assistant or something like that, like a Farnsworth Bentley type of show, I guess. But to make artists, singers, and rappers walk for blocks and blocks and blocks in the freezing cold, and not just subjecting them to it. Even the camera crews and the people that were in the crew with MTV, they had to walk. Those cameramen walked right next to them. How y'all think we saw it? Like, how do you think we saw it? A person as rich as Diddy gets bored easily. Chess becomes boring. Video games, electronics, cars, houses. When you have enough money to buy whatever you want, when there is no, when they will, something that isn't even in creation, a person will create it just because you want it, you get bored. A lot of these extremely rich men get bored. And when they do, what do you give a man or buy a man or woman that has everything? Humans. Because that's what he does. That's what he does. He plays with these people like they're like his Barbie dolls, you know, and whatnot. So humiliating these people and whatnot is his forte. And he also gets off to it. He enjoys watching people suffer at the hand of him. He enjoys it. It's like playing a board game or playing spades or something, like the enjoyment that you get out of that. That's what he gets, like turning everybody against each other, you know, all of that, but still at the same time, like praising him type of situation, not questioning anything that he says or does, because he literally looks at people as things. He don't look at them as human beings. That's why he don't treat them that way. So to make Dawn go through all of these obscene things and tell her, and the excuse be, well, this is what you have to do to be in the industry. This is what you have to do to make it big. Why? Like, why does any of this require me being on that stage? You harassing me and touching on me and, you know, doing stuff like that. Like, what does this have to do with fame? What does it have to do with that? It doesn't. It doesn't have anything to do with it at all. Besides, this is just a big game to him, because this is how he gets off. You know, he likes upsetting people, giving them false promises, and in the process of these false promises that he's putting in front of them doing anything to make sure that that set thing happens, because these are dreamers. You take a bunch of kids from impoverished areas that are coming on these shows and whatnot to be around you and whatnot. Why would they not do anything? And they're young coming into the game, so they're not thinking how they're thinking now. You know, now that they're in their 30s and 40s and stuff like that, the mindset is completely different because of what has happened to them and because of what they have learned. So you got a 22-year-old hopeful, you know, like the girls in Danity Kane. You just have these hopeful women that, you know, made it in this group, and with them making it inside of it, they just wanted to sing. They just wanted to dance. They just wanted to use their talent to get them to the top, because that's where they deserve to be, because they were talented. Why should they have to go through essay and all of that stuff to get there when that's not a part of the roadmap to be famous? It's not. It isn't. Having your way with them and all of that. And then they're young at that point in time. So a lot of stuff, they're confused. They're scared. They're nervous. They don't want to say no because they see how you react when you are told no. So it's grooming them. Yelling at them on camera and all of that stuff, telling them that they was fat, they needed to lose weight, that this and that, breaking them down. Breaking them down. So that when it's time for him to really pull the wool and show them who he really is and whatnot, they're already going to be down for it because of all of the grooming and the bad energy that he's already placed inside of them. So he's controlling them with fame, fortune, and all of that. And again, I don't look at it as them sticking around for money and trying to be famous and stuff like that. They were talented. Danity Kane dropped 2 albums. Both albums went #1. The first one went straight to #1, and their second album went straight to #1. Those girls worked hard. They got those albums done within a month or so. And then they had successful tours, headlining their own tours pretty much immediately. Where they worked hard. So they deserved the fame that they got. They just didn't receive none of the fortune from it. Those girls didn't get paid. No, they did not. He still owes all of the money. Every group member, he still owes money to this day. He just siphoned those girls. And when he got what he wanted them gone. Out of jealousy, because he couldn't control them. He broke up Danity Kane because Aubrey and D Woods weren't taking his shit. Everything that he was trying to do to them and saying to them and just treating them like anything, no. He did not allow that. I mean, they did not allow that. So he broke the group up on national TV. And I can imagine what would have happened if those cameras weren't there. If those cameras wasn't there, crazy. But he literally broke the group up. Got them all separated, was telling them things individually, and then treating some better than the others, like making sure Aubrey got photo shoots and all of that stuff, trying to create a division between them. Like, oh, we see Aubrey, y'all. If you keep it up, then you'll be like Aubrey. Like, we a group. Like, what are you talking about? Like, what? But he was doing that on purpose, literally. Pawns in his game. Like, he never took them seriously. That it was just a way for him to devour souls, because that's what he does. He's an energy vampire. So yeah, anyways, but let's keep going. For nearly a decade, Mr. Combs manipulated Miss Richard with mantras that submission to his depraved demands was necessary for her career advancement, instilling in her the belief that such an exploitation were required for a female artist to succeed in the music industry. It was not until Miss Ventura's bravery in coming forward that Miss Richard realized her own personal suffering was tied to many years by Mr. Combs that had become normalized for her. Now, with the things that she's saying about Cassie inside of this lawsuit, I think that Dawn is saying, since a lot of my experiences are connected to Cassie, because I was around her a lot, and since Cassie's came forward and told her story, I feel comfortable now coming forward. It's like she didn't want to tell Cassie's story for her, because she speaks a lot about Cassie in this lawsuit. So it's like she didn't want to tell Cassie's story for her, you know, because it's kind of harder for her to say what happened to her without saying what happened to other people, because they were involved, and also saying the things that she witnessed. But respecting Cassie, her peace, and her trauma, she waited until Cassie did it on her own. And now that Cassie did it, it's like, okay, now I feel that it's okay for me to do so, because I'm not telling her story for her. You know, she's told her own story. I'm just going to tell my experience that connects me with her story as well. So shout out to Don for that. As more women courageously come forward, plaintiff has been empowered by this collective strength and now adds her voice to the growing chorus of victims bravely sharing their harrowing stories. Together, they seek justice and stand in solidarity as the latest victims of the Me Too movement in the industry. And it says the parties is Don Angelique, which is Don Richard, the Bad Boy Records. Let me see if anybody else we need to say. Okay, Harvey Pierre, that's a good name. He also got sued for R-wording. Some people with Diddy. So let me see. Okay, Making a Band is listed. Yeah, none of this stuff's important. Okay, let's keep going. Let's keep going. Defended Janice Combs Publishing. Okay, she's suing a lot of people. Let's get into the allegations. Y'all know I want to get into allegations. Now, factual allegations. Miss Richard is selected to be in Mr. Combs' all-female musical group Danity Kane after competing on MTV's Making the Band. In or around 2004, Miss Richard was selected to participate in season 3 of MTV Network's reality television show Making the Band. The show centered around the formation and development of a new musical group under the mentorship of Mr. Combs. The contestants would compete and be chosen by Mr. Combs to form a band, which will go on to create albums and perform. For aspiring artists like Ms. Richard, Making the Band represented a concrete path to a career in the entertainment industry. Ms. Richard appeared in season 3 and 4 of Making the Band, which first aired in 2005. And in season 5, Making His Band, which aired in 2009. Now, she wasn't in the first couple seasons because he had he didn't choose nobody. He just kept Aubrey, Malika, and Andrea, and then he ended up getting rid of Malika and adding Shannon, D Woods, and Dawn to the band. So that's why Dawn was not in the first 2 seasons. Let's keep going. Prior to and including the first Danity Kane album, Making the Band was filmed entirely at Daddy's House Record Studio at 320 West 44th Street, New York, New York. The Making the Band content that focused on Danity Kane's work on its second album, Welcome to the Dollhouse, was filmed at Daddy's house and at Mr. Combs' Miami residence. Other Making the Band episodes included Los Angeles as a third filming location. Upon information and belief to create Making the Band, camera crews film 24 hours a day, gathering months worth of footage to condense it into mere hours of entertainment for viewers. Danity Kane released its self-debut album in August 2006 and its second album, Welcome to the Dollhouse, in March 2008. Danity Kane's first album sold over 400,000 copies, damages to Mr. Richard for unpaid salaries and estimated at $1 million. Danity Kane's second album, Welcome to the Dollhouse, sold over 200,000 copies. Damages to Mr. Richard for unpaid salaries and royalties are estimated at $500,000. Damages on unpaid wages for touring on over 100 dates for Miss Richard with Danity Kane are estimated to $1.8 million. Mr. Combs fired bandmate Aubrey O'Day and Juanita D. Woodgett from Danity Kane on live television at the height of its fame in 2008, which resulted in Danity Kane being disbanded in 2009. So, again, none of the girls got paid. They made millions of dollars because we're not even counting ticket sales. We're not counting merchandise. We're not counting Don and others writing, the credits that they didn't get for writing songs, and whatnot. They didn't get any performer credits. Listen to me. None of the women, 2 platinum albums, 2 #1 albums, going on 2 tours. They went on a tour the first season and they headlined their own tour the second season. Not a dime. Could you imagine? Could you imagine doing all of that work and not getting a dime? Nothing. Nothing. Because Diddy don't believe in that. He don't believe in actually paying people their worth. What he feels like he's doing, as long as he inviting you to parties and giving you random little gifts and wardrobe and stuff like that, he feel like that's payment. That's payment. I done took you around the world. I done introduced you to this person and that person, and I done put you in clothes and, you know, got you a necklace and all. That's how he felt like payment is, 100%. Because then when they come in, when they got their hands out, like, okay, can we get paid, please? It's just like, then here they come with the bill. Then it's, then they want to come with all these bills. Then it's studio cost and touring cost and this and that and the choreographer and da. Y'all broke. Y'all ain't got no money. Y'all need to get back in the studio. That's what he do. And what is these artists to do? What are they to do? This is their dream he has in their hands. Like, what do you do? Crazy. Miss Richard first encounter with Mr. Combs' aggressive, intimidating behavior and animus towards women. During the audition on the set of Making the Band, Mr. Combs projected an aura of superiority, wealth, and power. Mr. Combs regularly wore sunglasses and avoided looking the female contestants in the eyes, the drugs, contributing to an atmosphere of uncertainty and intimidation. During auditions, Mr. Combs spoke to the female contestants in a hostile, condescending manner, making disparaging gender-based remarks such as calling them fat, ugly, chiz, and ooze. And he absolutely did. I can recall 2 episodes where he called Andrea fat. He said the same thing about Malika. He said the same thing about, what is her name? She's my girl too. Dominique. There was a few girls that he would say was fat and that needed to lose weight. He would say that. He absolutely would call them fat. He called L'Oreal, the choreographer, cussed her out. And MTV got a little snippet on an episode, but that's why you keep hearing the bleep. The bleep is because he's arguing with Lorianne Gibson. And he calling her all type of B words, and whatnot. Like, okay, being on YouTube is being on YouTube. But if I had a business and females work for me, I would never call them a B word. I would never call them that. No, that's extremely unprofessional to be saying and speaking to any employee that way. Like, that's crazy. Please hit the like. Please hit the like. Over 17. Oh, Lord, about 700 people in the building. Please hit the like. Please hit the like. Miss Richard felt threatened and intimidated by Mr. Combs' blatant disdain for young women like herself, who were excited for the opportunity to be on his show. Once the ban was made, Mr. Combs' contempt for women was readily apparent as he continued to display aggressive and hostile behavior towards Miss Richard and her all-female Danity Kane bandmates. Mr. Combs regularly referred to the 5 women as Jizz and Ooze, and denigrated their physical appearances. By way of example, Mr. Combs stated that Miss Richard was too skinny and needed to do something about this, her face. So he did at times tell Dawn that basically he was saying, without saying, pay attention on the show, that he wanted Dawn to get a nose job. He never liked Dawn's nose. Never. And in this group, Danity Kane, he was pressuring Dawn to get a nose job. He was. And she did. I love Dawn down, but she absolutely ended up succumbing to Diddy and getting her nose tweaked. Yes, she did. But that's what he was talking about. He didn't think Dawn was pretty. He didn't think Dawn was pretty. He thought Dawn was ugly but talented. That's just how I feel. That's just how I feel how you felt about Dawn. And I think Dawn is gorgeous. I've always thought Dawn was very beautiful. Loved just everything about her. Extremely talented woman. I always just loved her down. But in my opinion, because she was a darker girl, he felt like she was ugly. And because D Woods had thighs and a butt, you know, being a country girl, he said the same thing about her. He said that he thought she was pretty. I think he felt like D Woods was pretty. I just don't think he liked her body. Because back then, the whole voluptuous, bootylicious phase, like that wasn't really like in yet. So like being thick, the BBL, all of that, like what people pay for now, D Woods happening naturally back then was not accepted in the industry, like, you know, 2008, 2009 era. Thick was not necessarily like in. You know, it was still the twiggy, skinny girls that were being pushed to the forefront. That's why he chose Dawn in the first place. He didn't choose anybody thick. He only chose D Wood because he felt like he could make her lose weight. That's it. Because he definitely made her insecure, and he did it on purpose. The wardrobe and stuff that he would send to her, he would make it so that it wasn't flattering or made her, you know, fit well with her body structure. He was sending clothes that were too little and stuff like that to make her feel, you know, insecure, to make her feel like, well, oh, you can't fit nothing. Oh, well, then you just gonna have to rock. There was this one performance that they did, and she had on like a vest and some like jeans he wanted her to look bad because all of the other group members were kind of like in unison with what they were wearing, except for D Woods. So he wanted her to feel fat. He wanted her to feel like you don't fit in. You need to lose weight. You need to just drink liquids. You don't need to eat anything, because he was starving all of the women, all of them. When they were in those rehearsals, falling out and stuff like that, all of that sweat, they had been dancing 7-8 hours straight. You know, those choreography or rehearsals was crazy. That's why him and Lorianne had got into it, because even Lorianne had to say something like, okay, but look, you're working these girls way too hard. Like, this is crazy. Like, and that's why, if you look at Danity Kane's success, why they were so successful. They were like the Jackson 5. Literally. They were like the Jackson 5. They absolutely were. They were worked hard and disciplined when they didn't do what was needed. And he was also starving them, making them skip meals. He never had any food out on the set for them. And it was always supposed to be food. Every set has food. Even if it's just for the cameramen and stuff, like, no, he made sure there was no food out. It was just bottled waters. He had them all on that like banana shakes, strawberry shakes, these like protein shakes and whatnot. So they pretty much had to drink their food, and they just had to take it. They couldn't say anything about it and whatnot. He would flip out when he would see like the girls go out. Like when they would go out and go get their own food and whatnot, because Aubrey was very rebellious. She was always rebellious. So she'll go out and eat food, and she'll make the other girls go with her. Like, she sure would. And they'd just be like, ooh, are you sure? Because they literally were not allowed to eat. They weren't. They were not allowed to eat. But let's keep going. So yeah, I feel like he treated Dawn like that because she was a dark-skinned girl. So with her being a dark-skinned girl, it's like, you need to fix your face because you have to give European-esque some way, shape, or form. Like, you too black. Your look is black. Your sound is black. You know, everything about you. Like, you need to change it up. So yeah, poor thing. Poor thing. Let's keep going. To be on the show. But I'm just staying for okay. Okay. By way of example, Mr. Combs stated that Miss Richard was too skinny and needed to do something with her face. On one occasion, in or around 2005, during the first season of Making the Band 3, Miss Richard observed Mr. Combs' ex-partner and mother of his 3 children, Kim Porter, leaving Mr. Combs' recording studio in tears with visible face injuries, including a lacerated lip. So she said she was at the studio and she saw Kim Porter come out and she was visibly, he had just toe off on her. Hit the woman so bad that he even had made a laceration on top of or above her lip and whatnot. She was crying, visibly crying, distraught. Yeah. So, yeah, poor Kim Porter. Poor Kim Porter. You can't convince me that he is not the reason that she is not alive. You can't convince me otherwise. Realizing that Mr. Combs was capable of committing acts of violence against women caused Miss Richard to feel deep apprehension and fear that Mr. Combs could one day physically harm her. Mr. Richard was present when Mr. Combs was introduced to Cassandra Ventura for the first time in or around 2006. Excuse me. Mr. Combs positioned himself directly in front of Mrs. Ventura's seat, invading her personal space and fixated on her with an intense, unyielding stare, isolating her from the other people in the room, including Mrs. Ventura's then boyfriend, music producer Ryan Leslie. Wow, like crazy. Wow, you got your nerve. Coincidentally, this first meeting between Mr. Combs and Mrs. Ventura was the first time that Miss Richard was in Mr. Combs' presence without a camera crew filming. Observing Mr. Combs behave in such an intimidating, predatory manner the first time that they were off camera made Miss Richard feel deeply apprehensive and afraid of him. Subsequently, Mrs. Ventura ended her relationship with Mr. Leslie and began dating Mr. Combs, who would become violent and towards her. For the majority, right here it says, sexual harassment, inhumane treatment, and denial of basic needs by Mr. Combs. For the majority of Mrs. Richard's tenure as a member of Danity, Kane, and Diddy Dirty Money, Mr. Combs required her to remain at his various residences and studios in New York, Los Angeles, Florida, and New Jersey for activities such as recording, rehearsing, dressing, preparing costumes, and exercising. Throughout the production of Making the Band 3 and 4, Mr. Combs deprived Mrs. Richard and her Danity Kane bandmates of basic needs such as adequate food and sleep. When Miss Richard or her Danity Kane bandmates requested meals or rest, Mr. Combs refused and chastised them with derogatory comments like, "You bitches don't want this," or "Y'all not hungry enough," and "I'm not paying you just to work. I'm paying you just to work." This demeaning behavior gradually undermined Mrs. Richard's confidence and contributed significantly to her growing feelings of insecurity and fear of reprisal from Mr. Combs. So again, he was depriving all of them food. He would not let them eat. And when they wanted to eat, because he truly could make them not eat, especially on camera. But he would make them feel like, "Oh, y'all don't want it because y'all want to eat. Oh, y'all want to go to sleep. Y'all want some rest, so ain't hungry. Y'all." So imagine being young, impressionable, and really wanting to be in this band. The band was everything back then. Making the Band was huge. Everybody wanted to be a part of that group. Everybody. So you are going to sacrifice certain things to make sure you make it. Thinking like, okay, well, once I make the band, then I can go back to being me. Then I can go back to doing what I do. I go back to eating how I normally eat, and all this stuff. And it's not like that. It's like a constant prison that you are being placed in. So to feel guilty about wanting the basic necessities is crazy, like food, sleep, water, crazy. So yeah, and it was for all of them. He starved all of them. They would starve. They would go a day or two, sometimes 3, without eating anything, without eating nothing at all. Yeah. I really don't care what Lil Rod said. He's no better than Diddy. Literally. I have witness statements, recorded phone calls from victims that he's hurt that don't got nothing to do with Diddy. Yeah. I don't care what he said. I literally don't care. Until he faced his demons, I have receipts that he did this to women, that he argued with women, that he even tried to pay one. Actually, not tried. He did pay her. He did pay her. Lil Rod. So yeah, he can't give me no advice. He can't talk to me about nothing. I don't give a what Diddy did to him. He deserved it. I don't give a I don't give a about Lil Rod at all, whatsoever. Like, I can play recordings right now. I have an interview with one of his victims. We talked on the phone about 2 hours. And yeah, he is no better than Diddy. No better. Do not let him fool you. Rod is suing Diddy because he was not paid. He does deserve to be paid because he did work. That is the only thing that I will agree with Rod's lawsuit about. Everything else is bullshit. Because he was a willing participant. He stopped being a participant when Diddy dropped him. When Diddy just stopped calling him, stopped dealing with him, and he didn't get paid from doing the Love album. So, yeah, even the food part, I honestly, and there's no disrespect towards y'all, I just can't get down with anybody that, like, at all. If I will cut my own family off for it and don't want anything to do with them because they have done certain things, who the fuck is Lil Rod? I can hate Diddy and Diddy get his just due without having to side with people that have done the same things and even worse things because we have the same narrative. We both want to take down the same person. I can't get with that. I can't get with it. I have all of Rod's information, both of his cell phone numbers, everything. Never contacted him because we don't have anything to talk about. I don't care what Diddy took you through. Oh, well. I don't care if it's starved. All you deserve because you're still fat. So I don't see how you starved and you're fat. So, like, I'm like, but you big, though. Like, you big, though. But moving right along. Upon information and belief, Mr. Combs would regularly be awake for prolonged periods of time because he was on drugs. During these periods, Mr. Combs demanded continuous access to Miss Richard and her Danity Kane bandmates, often forcing them to record and rehearse for stretches of 36 to 48 hours without breaks. Forced to choose between eating and sleeping, Miss Richard lost a significant amount of weight, weighing approximately 100 pounds. So when she was in Danity Kane and Danity Kane first started, she only weighed 100 pounds because she was not allowed to eat. And I think Shannon was around the same weight too. Shannon and Andrea. I think Shannon, Andrea, and then he was trying to make Andrea feel fat too. He sure was. Because when they came back, he was like, Andrea, you gained a little weight. I'm like, no, she didn't. Like, she looks better than she did when she left. She looked better with a little weight on her. Because Drea was way thinner the first season, and then she came back to the second season. Her face was more full. You know, all of that. She looked great. She looked amazing. Her body was still snatched. You know, everything. She looked amazing. He's still trying to make her feel like she needed to lose weight. He did. When he was pushing her with the choreography, her and Aubrey, he was pushing her because he wanted Andrea to look like Aubrey. He wanted all of their bodies to look like Aubrey O'Day's body. So he kept pushing Andrea to get thinner. No, Andrea did not have any children until after she left the group. Andrea, she does have kids. She has a son and a daughter, and she is married. But she didn't have any children until she left the group. None of them had any kids. Nobody in the group had a child. Nobody. No, but Andrea did have children. She did, but it was after she left the band because she had broke up with her boyfriend that she was dating during the season. She broke up with him on the show. And then after she left the band, she met another man and got with him. They got married and they had 2 children. I think it's 2, a boy and a girl. So yeah, and her kids are so cute. Her daughter is so beautiful. She looks just like her. But yeah, so yeah, Drea was my favorite too. Drea, I don't know. I just love the whole band, like all of them. But if it comes to I will have to say Drea and Dawn are like neck and neck. Drea and Dawn, like they were like neck and neck, like with my favorites. I just love me some Andrea. Yes, Andrea is Hispanic. She absolutely is. So at a height of 5'4", Miss Richard began to normalize these extreme conditions and perceive them as the standard requirements of her participation in Danity Kane. Absolutely. I feel that he gave the entire group eating disorders. Because once you get used to it, you're used to it. It just is what it is. It just is what it is. Once you start getting used to eating like that, it's your normal. Mr. Combs regularly sent his associates to wake Miss Richard and her Danity Kane bandmates in an overnight hours so he could watch them rehearse. And regularity of these disturbances led Miss Richard to adapt by sleeping in a sitting position, fully dressed with makeup on, heightening her anxiety. Over time, this abnormal sleeping arrangement came to feel routine, further normalizing Mr. Combs' invasive demands. Now that is crazy. Having to pretend that you up but sleep, like, wow. That is crazy. In addition to exhausting rehearsals, Mr. Combs required Miss Richard and her bandmates to participate in intense workouts with a personal trainer. On one occasion, while running on the beach, Miss Richard became so dehydrated that she vomited. Instead of offering medical assistance, MTV Network's camera crew filmed the incident, contributing to her acceptance of such treatment as part of her professional life. So instead of them rushing her to get some fluids in her, an IV in her, whatnot, because she is extremely dehydrated, because they were not only being deprived of food, water as well. Instead of them getting her to the hospital, MTV filmed it. And there was another young lady who, when Diddy sent them on this like marathon run, and she either twisted her ankle or like broke it in the process of running like 7, 8 miles, 10 miles, something like that. I think they ran like 10 miles. And she was a great singer too. I think her name was like Tiffany, or something like that. She was so pretty Black girl. And they filmed that too. And she was so scared that she was going to get sent home. The girl was trying to still dance. That's how you know he was critical on them, because she was still trying to dance with a messed up leg. She was still trying to get up there and dance, but Lorianne wouldn't let her. So they did let them sing. So, because they had to sing and dance, so he ended up keeping her based off of her voice. But that next episode, he sent her home. That very next episode, he sent her home. Like, I was like, wow, you could have just sent her last week. Like, why? Like, so, yeah, she messed up her hip. Yes, her hip. Thank you. It was her hip from the running, that he had them doing. Yeah, what's her name? Tiffany? Was that her name? Marquita. And yeah, she was petrified that she was going to get sent home. And it's like, why are they running marathons? Basically, like, wow. And MTV filmed it, and they filmed Dawn too. I remember when Dawn fell out on the beach. She did, and they filmed it. Whole thing. Instead of getting the girl medical assistance, her name was Tiffany. Thank y'all. Yes, her name was Tiffany. Yes, and I really like. She could blow. She was such a good singer, and she was pretty. She was so pretty. Oh my gosh, she was so cute. And I loved her. I felt really bad because I want her to make the group because she has such a unique voice, and it meshed well with the other girls. And yeah, he still booted her. I was like, wow, he is so dumb. So correct. Correct me, and yes, MTV does need to be sued. Correct, absolutely. Because The unrelenting and rigorous schedule of rehearsals, performance, and near constant filming that Mr. Combs imposed caused Miss Richard to experience extreme weight loss, dehydration, fatigue, and painful rashes from the microphone pack she was required to wear on her back. These conditions intensified Miss Richard's feelings of powerlessness as she increasingly viewed them as part of her professional reality and feared the consequences of any resistance. In a further assertion of power and dominance, Mr. Combs insisted on holding meetings while dressed only in his underwear. Calling the band over there, calling Danity Kane over there while just sitting there in underwear. For a meeting, you don't want to put no clothes on, player? Like, yeah, that's what she said. She said right here, Mr. Combs insisted on holding meetings while dressed only in his underwear. On one occasion in 2008 at his Miami residence, Mr. Combs emailed Miss Richard directing her to meet him in his living room. When she arrived, he was wearing only his underwear. Miss Richard asked Combs to put his clothes on, but he refused, stating, "This is my fucking house." Mr. Combs then conducted a meeting lasting approximately an hour while dressed in his underwear, causing Miss Richard to feel violated and embarrassed and amplifying her feelings of powerlessness. That's crazy. Following the official Danity Kane breakup in early 2009, effectuated by Mr. Combs, Miss Richard experienced significant financial hardship with no prospective opportunities for employment within the entertainment field. Mrs. Richard spent several months traveling from Baltimore to Daddy's House recording studio in New York without pay or allocated a budget. Mr. Combs promised Miss Richard compositions would result in payment of license fees and royalties pursuant to her contract with Bad Boy Records. However, no such compensation was ever reported or paid to Miss Richard. Damages related to these continuing copyright infringements will be proved at trial. So again, they never made a dime for being in Danity Kane, nor any of the work she was doing for his other artists. Dawn is also a writer. She don't just sing, she writes music as well. And she didn't get paid for none of that. Writing for his other artists, none of that. She didn't get a dime, okay? Nada, okay? There's no report of her ever reporting to the IRS the amount of money that she was paid for being in the group Danity Kane. Therefore, it never happened. Because she would have had to report it. If he write her a check for $200,000, $100,000, whatever she's due, she has to report that. She has to. She never reported because she was never paid. She was never paid, and none of the other group members either. And people wonder why it was not as hard as people thought it would be for them to walk away. It was hard to walk away from the fans and the glitz and the glamour and all of that stuff, but to walk away being treated badly and not paid, and your family's still struggling, and and all of that. Everybody want to help their family, but that's not the situation. Well, let's keep going. Diddy Dirty Money. Miss Richard's experiences with Mr. Combs' gender-based physical violence, criminal acts, assault, hits, and intimidation. By approximately the fall of 2009, many of Miss Richard's compositions have been recorded by other Bad Boy recording or World Records artists. Due to the success of her compositions, Miss Richard was invited to meet the musical artist Kalina Harper. Okay, if you don't know who Kalina Harper is, let me put her up here on the screen. Kalina, I do not like this fly. I cannot stand her. Kalina is the lesbian over here in the pink on the other side of Don, with this buzz cut. Now, I don't like her. She was on Love and Flip Flop. Her husband ain't about ish. They was having threesomes and all type of other crazy stuff. She was also dating a female while in a relationship with her husband. They brought the female onto the show, was part of their storyline, you know, and all of that. Okay. Now, I never liked Kalina because Kalina to me is weak. She's always been weak. She's always let other people like run her destiny. And I feel that she does that because it's easier when you fail. If something doesn't work out, it was easier for her to blame it on her husband and say that it didn't work out than her blame it on herself. So that's why I feel that she let him take control. If you watch Love and Flip Flop and watch the seasons, Love and Flip Flop Atlanta, with Kalina and her husband being on there, they were a lot. They were a lot. She had got pregnant. He didn't think that the baby was his, just like Kirk and Rashida. It was a lot. It was too much. It was just too much. So I just couldn't get into her. I tried to, but I can get into her. I will say that I did like her in the band Diddy Dirty Money. This was a decent group. They had a few hits that I liked. Hello, Good Morning would be like one of my favorites songs by them. The one featuring Nicki Minaj. I love that song. But they were a okay group, you know, Don coming out of Danity, Kane and whatnot. But this just shows you how he ripped this group apart because he wanted to be in it. Okay, he didn't like coming on stage with Danity Kane and everybody screaming, Dawn, Aubrey, Andrea, D Woods, Shannon. He didn't like that. He didn't like that. He didn't like it so much that he ripped them apart and became the group himself and called it Diddy Dirty Money. Danity Kane, Diddy Dirty Money. So this is basically Diddy's Danity Kane. That's how I would explain it. So this is Kalina and this is Dawn and obviously Diddy in the middle. So that is Diddy Dirty Money, okay? For the people that don't know who they are, because she's going to talk about the group for a minute here. So just so you can put a face to the name. So, okay, due to the success of her compositions, Miss Richard was invited to meet with musical artist Kalina Harper, Miss Harper, and shortly thereafter, Mr. Combs and Miss Richard and Miss Harper formed a new group, Diddy Dirty Money. Initial recording for Diddy Dirty Money's album Last Train to Paris took place in Mr. Combs' home on Downey, a drive in Los Angeles, California. On the first day of recording, Miss Richard and Miss Harper arrived at Mr. Combs' home and waited in the kitchen, where Mr. Combs' girlfriend, Mrs. Ventura, was frying eggs for him. Mrs. Richard observed Mr. Combs come down the stairs looking high on Uggs, enter the kitchen, approach Mrs. Ventura, and scream, I've been asking you for my shit. I can't stand you, bitch. You never do it right. Mr. Combs pushed Miss Ventura against the wall and choked her, okay? And then picked up the scalding hot saucepan of eggs and threw it at her, causing her to fall to the ground in a fetal position. Cursing and screaming, Mr. Combs dragged Miss Ventura up the stairs. Girl, he took some literal eggs frying in a pan. Took the pan off the stove because she was cooking the eggs for him. I guess she was taking too long. And he took the pan of eggs and threw them at her while they were frying. He threw her against the wall, and then grabbed a pan of eggs and threw them on her. And the eggs, I'm sure, super hot, scolding her. She falls to the ground in the fetal position, just like she did in the hallway in the viral video at the hotel. When he started hurting and harming her, she just instantly went into the fetal position. You know, I think that was her way of submitting. I think it's a lot of women's way of submitting when they are in a relationship of DV, to where they will just, you know, any hit, they will just pretend like, you know, like they're just unconscious when just so they can stop. So the person can be done, completely submissive to them within that moment so that they would know that you win. You know, you don't have to take it any further than this. You got it, you know. And I think that was Cassie's go-to. Because again, Dawn's explaining the fetal position. The video, we saw the fetal position. The Roger, the executive, the lead, the head security, talked about Cassie being in the fetal position often, like when they have the altercation in the car in the SUV and he ripped her out of the car and went to hurt and harm her, she instantly fell into the fetal position on the ground outside of the SUV. So I think that was her go-to. I think that that's what she did to let him know, like, hey, you win. You got it. You just don't hurt me. Like, you got it. So, yeah. Frozen in shock and terror, Miss Richard heard glass shattering and crashing and banging noises as Mr. Combs dragged Mrs. Ventura up the stairs. Now, notice how Dawn says that Cassie was just downstairs cooking eggs and she was cooking the eggs for him. Okay. So with her cooking the eggs for him and him coming downstairs saying, like, you know, you don't do it right, blah, 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 pushes her, throws the eggs at her. Again, this is a game to Diddy. Okay. He gets off on treating people any kind of way. So when he first saw Cassie, he saw innocence and he wanted to rip it from her. He wanted to rip it from her. So him doing the things that he did to her, unprovoked, okay, means that's how he keeps her in fear and walking on eggshells when most people feel like it will take an altercation or at least an argument for the person to get violent. You don't have to do anything when it comes to somebody like Diddy, like an ultimate narcissist. You don't have to do anything. You breathing is enough for them to haul off on you, to hurt you, to harm you. Breathing is enough. You don't have to do anything else because this is a game. So all of the stuff that he feels on the inside, he takes it out on her. You know, when he's feeling a certain type of way, when he's feeling badly, or, you know, he'll come take it out on her. That's his way of getting it out, you know. So it don't take anything at all. Just her presence alone is enough. And they will find things. They will find a reason, because that's him finding a reason. It's not that she's not doing what you said. Because if he would have came downstairs and Cassie was sitting on the couch or something like that, oh, I told you to make me this. You're supposed to be down here cooking, blah, blah, blah. Not to excuse it, but that would be understandable. But the girl sitting there doing what you asked her to do, and you still put your hands on her, that just means her breathing is enough. Her existence alone is enough for you to hurt her, because she's your punching bag. That's what she, you know, when people need some aggression to get out, like boxers, they'll go hit the bag. She's his bag, you know, which is unfortunate. Like, poor thing. Okay, where were we? Up the stairs. Okay. Miss Ventura up the stairs. Miss Richard wanted to intervene and help Mrs. Ventura, but Miss Harper adamantly refused to interfere in Mr. Combs' relationship and physically led Miss Richard out of the residence. So Kalina, Miss Love and Flip Flop, when Dawn went to try to go upstairs to help Cassie, Kalina told her no. Kalina said, do not. Please hit the like. Please hit the like. Please hit the like. Over 800 people in the building. Please get the likes up. Or we could just go ahead and just end this, because that means y'all ain't feeling it. We ain't getting those likes up. We can go ahead and move around. It's like 16 other YouTubers talking about this right now. Y'all can go hit them up and tell them I said that. Please hit that like. It's free. And we deserve it. Like, please hit the like. So Kalina told Dawn not only to not intervene, but also removed Dawn physically outside of the residence so that she wouldn't intervene. So Kalina wanted what was happening to Cassie to happen to her, because Kalina was going through the same thing. Kalina's husband, the one that was on Love and Flip Flop with her, he was doing the same thing to her. And Diddy knew that Kalina's husband was putting his hands on her because they had that in common. It was like a bond of theirs to put your woman in place. Like, this is how you put your woman in place, you know, and whatnot. So Yeah. So that's another reason, like, I can't get down with Kalina. Because even if you didn't want to do nothing because you weak, you could have let Dawn. You could have let her. You could have let the woman intervene, even if it was just to go up to, you never know. Maybe Diddy would have listened. Maybe if he would have redirected his anger, then he just would have redirected his anger. I mean, whatever happened would have happened. But it wasn't for you to intervene. Like, what if he would have took Cassie's life up there? What if she wouldn't have made it out? All it takes is one time to hit a person hard enough to, a man don't know their strength when it comes to putting their hands on women. That's why they shouldn't be doing it. So for her to allow Diddy to do it, I don't know. I think it speaks volumes because it doesn't matter what you're going through. So if you allow your husband, Kalina, to put his hands on you and whatnot, and you've accepted it, it does not mean that everyone does. It doesn't mean that everyone has to be a bystander and watch these things happen. Intervening is necessary, and it doesn't matter who's doing it, as long as someone does, so that they can let Diddy know. Because this is why he does a lot of what he does. It's because no one intervenes. No one did anything. They would just allow Diddy to do whatever he wants, which instills even more fear into the people around him. Because if he can do this to her in front of everybody and get away with it, who am I? He loved Cassie. That's his girl. I'm not. He loved her enough to leave her alive. Why would he leave me alive? He said he make people disappear. He don't want her to disappear. But he could want me to, because I'm disposable. Cassie has worth in his life. I don't. So, and if he doing all of this to her, I can only imagine what he'll do to me. Yeah, 100%. But let's keep reading. Please hit the like. Please hit the like. Please hit the like. Miss Harper adamantly refused to intervene in Mr. Combs' relationship, which is Kalina. She anytime he did that to Cassie, she just allowed it. She just didn't care. And physically led Miss Richard. Okay. And physically led Miss Richard out of the residence. Terrified and shaken, Miss Richard returned to her hotel, where she was unable to sleep due to worrying about Mrs. Ventura and her own safety. So she couldn't even sleep because what she had just witnessed up all night. The following day, Miss Richard received a call demanding that she return to Mr. Combs' residence and continue recording. Mr. Combs brought Miss Richard and Miss Harper into the recording room at his studio, locked the door, dimmed the lights, and gave each of them flowers. See, that's the whole narcissistic thing. Oh, let me give y'all flowers. I know y'all see me throw eggs on her and, drag her all up the stairs. And, I was up there punching and stomping on the girl. And, but, oh, well, here goes some flowers. You better not tell nobody, but God. Mr. Combs went on a length on that length, stating, this is normal. This what was just a lover's argument where no one was hurt. This is what love is. What? What? Not this is what love is. Not this is normal. What the fuck is he talking about? That's that narcissism. Trying to make them feel, literally, he said, this is normal. So, and that's not him saying like, this is normal, like when couples go through this. It's not what he's saying. What he's saying is, you're going to see it again. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. What he's saying is, this is normal. You're going to see it again. So don't feel no type of way. Okay? Because when I throw out a moving vehicle and whatnot, I don't want you to gasp, because this is what goes down. This is my normal. Okay? And it's about to become y'all's. So don't trip. Ain't nothing to trip on. You see it once, you see it twice. Like this will continue. None of this is going to stop. Okay? That's what I'm getting from what he's saying. I'm not getting like, oh, well, couples go through things and whatnot. No, I'm not getting that. I'm getting you dimming these lights, you locking this door, you handing me flowers. this is an intimidation tactic. You are doing this to intimidate me into one, feeling like it's normal. Because when you feel like something is normal, then that's when you get to the point where you're taking thoughts that you wouldn't normally take and trying to rationalize said thought. But there's no rationalizing. Like, this is not normal. It shouldn't be happening. You know, like, so, yeah. So he basically saying, oh, get used to it. Get used to it. Don't turn your nose up at it. None of that. It's going to happen again, is what I'm getting. He says, this is normal. This was just a lover's argument where no one was hurt. And then there's, again, where no one was hurt. Clear. How could you throw some scalding hot eggs on someone and they not be hurt? How can you drag somebody upstairs while people are hearing glass and multiple other things breaking, this woman screaming, you know, all of that, but no one got hurt? What are you talking about? What? Do you think we stupid? Like, what are you talking about? But oh well. I'm giving you an opportunity. If you want to make it, you'll shut your mouth. If you say anything, there will be consequences. Again, intimidation. Mr. Combs further warned that people end up missing, being threatened while locked for over 20 minutes in a small enclosed space with Mr. Combs after observing Mr. Combs violently assault Miss Ventura the day before. Miss Richard was terrified and genuinely believed that Mr. Combs would follow through with his threats. Girl. In or around November 2009, after the Soul Train Awards in Atlanta, Georgia, Mr. Combs flew Miss Richard and Ms. Harper to his house in New York on his private jet for an after party. There were many well-known celebrities at the after party. A copious amounts of illegal rooms were being openly consumed. Upon information and belief, Mr. Combs had arranged for dozens of young women and girls, some of whom appeared to be underage, to be transported to the party. The women arrived wearing little to no clothing and were given rooms and alcohol. Many of them appeared lethargic or passed out while Mr. Combs and his guests performed sexual acts on them. Miss Richard believed that her presence at the party was a test to see whether Mr. Combs could trust her. Now y'all see why Homeland Security is involved? With the ex-African? Now y'all see why they're involved? Crazy. So she said, you know, it's a bunch of well-known celebrities there, 100%. The majority of the girls didn't look even, that were not of age. And this is why the majority of these parties that he would have would be on yachts, would be in the middle of oceans and whatnot. Because in the middle of the ocean, where's the law? What laws are in the middle of the ocean? If you are in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean or in the middle of the Pacific Ocean and you are in you're on no one's like jurisdiction, to where you're not in America, you're not in, you know, Africa or, you know, wherever. You're not truly like on, you know, you're just kind of just idling. There are no rules. There are no rules. So you got all of these underage to young women, not of age, being in the middle of international waters, you know, and whatnot with these grown men. It makes it much easier to commit these crimes because no one's going to say anything. So whether they're out in the middle of the water or nowhere, I mean, or, you know, or not, it's easier to break the law. It's easier to do things that you know should not be happening. It's easier for people to get caught doing stuff like that, being in like I had a house doing it, or a resort or something like that, because there's eyes, there's cameras, there, you know, things like that. Diddy don't let nobody have phones, nothing. So at these type of establishments and whatnot. So yeah, I do believe that it was a test as well. And also not just a test, it's also a way of being guilty by association. So how can you go out and tell the world about the things that you've seen if you were there? How can you go out and be like, oh, well, Diddy does this and he does that and he does this and he does this, and I was at this party with him and he had, you know, girls not of age, you know, doing blah, blah, blah. Okay, well, you were there. So now you're like an accomplice. you know, which gives people more incentive to not say anything because they feel guilty, you know, because they didn't do anything, you know, they allowed, you know, that to happen. Because if Dawn says that she's seen girls that were underage and that they were all lethargic and not really responding, really, most of them unconscious, and people were just having their way with them, people can look at her like, okay, well, you were there. Why you didn't call the police? Why you ain't do nothing? You know, which makes it harder for people to come forward and say anything because, again, they feel responsible in ways when, again, blame the person that did it. You didn't do anything, so you don't have anything to be ashamed of. Mr. Combs repeatedly said things like, this is a buffet, enjoy yourselves. This is what we do. This is how we party. Ms. Richard felt shocked and horrified at the sight of Mr. Combs and his guests violating incapacitated young women, and implored Mr. Combs' personal assistant, Capricorn Clark, to allow her to leave. Ms. Clark insisted that Ms. Richard wait 15 minutes for Ms. Clark to make it make sense, that is, to make Ms. Richard exit less conspicuous so that Mr. Combs would not notice that she had left, knowing that she was not free to leave and had to wait for Ms. Clark to help her orchestrate her departure. Ms. Richard experienced feelings of panic and being trapped against her will. And that is, that, I mean, you are part of something that you literally don't want nothing to do with. You can feel trapped. Mr. Combs regularly placed Ms. Richard in similar situations with no means to escape. At Mr. Combs' drug-fueled parties, his guests, including Ms. Richard, were required to surrender their phones upon entry. Mr. Combs kept the doors locked and guarded by security personnel, making it impossible for Mrs. Richard to leave without alerting Mr. Combs that she had done so. Mr. Combs hired police officers to attend his parties, sending a clear message to guests that his influence extended to law enforcement officers and creating a climate of fear and a tactic to warning that reporting him to authorities would be both unacceptable and futile. So again, if you see this man putting his hands on people, throwing eggs on people, got police guarding him while he in here with girls that are not of age, and people are just having their way with him while they're lethargic and unconscious and whatnot, what would you not be afraid of? What's not to be scared of? And then you have no power over any of these situations. None. That would be very triggering, very traumatic, you know, to be a part of something you just want nothing to do with. It's kind of like you're not a club person, but you're at the club. Like you just don't want to be there, but it's security guards and all of this stuff that not there to protect you, but they're to prevent you to not leave. Because if she could just get up and go, she would just get up and go. Like, why does she need permission? Why does she have to ask Miss Clark, you know, to help her get, like, what? What is going on? Like, this is insane. On many occasions, Mr. Combs had parties in his Miami, Florida residence that lasted for several days. At one of the parties, Ms. Richard witnessed Mr. Combs openly stating that he arranged for busloads of young, exotic girls, such as mixed Black and Asian, Indonesian, and albino. Once again, Ms. Richard observed inebriated young girls being annihilated by Mr. Combs and his guest. In a state of panic and terror, Ms. Richard fled to the bedroom Mr. Combs had insisted she stay in and barricaded the door shut with furniture. Mr. Combs openly assaulted Miss Ventura in front of Ms. Richard and other witnesses on multiple occasions. One occasion, in or around fall 2009, Diddy Dirty Money was in New York preparing to perform at a festival. Inside of their vehicle, Mr. Combs grabbed Mrs. Ventura's neck, pulled her out of the van onto the grass, and pinned her head down, choking her while yelling, "You gonna get up today?" This incident took place in the backstage area just outside the festival and was entirely visible to passerby. In another instant, in or around 2010, Mr. Combs punched Miss Ventura in the face in the bathroom of a party in Los Angeles. Frequently, When Miss Ventura attempted a voice of opinion or stand up to Mr. Combs, he would strike her or wrap his hands around her throat and choke her. So basically, anytime Cassie would try to like stick up for herself, like he would say, like, you're gonna do this, you're gonna do that, or you're gonna sleep with this person tonight, you know, stuff like that, she would defend herself. You know, she'd just be like, you know what, I don't want to do that. Or Sean, I am not doing that. And then he would hurt her in front of everybody. So it wasn't a secret. Everyone knew. Everybody at the party knew what he did to her. They saw her face, visibly hurt. Nobody did nothing. Nobody said a word. They just act like it didn't happen. How scary would that be? Imagine yourself a woman in that type of situation, to where your boss that won't let you go, that because Don knew too much, you know. So that was the main reason why he kept requesting her and wouldn't let her go anywhere and all of that, because she knew too much. She saw too much. So now you're a part of it. Now you're a part of it. He made sure that she felt that way. He made sure of it. So, yeah, poor thing. You know, you're a part of it. So, on multiple occasions, she saw Cassie being hurt and harmed, you know, by this man, and nothing was done by it. And publicly, not behind closed doors, publicly. On the first several occasions that they observed Mr. Combs at home, Mrs. Ventura, Miss Richard and Miss Harper spoke with Miss Ventura to support and encourage Miss Ventura in escaping her abusive relationship with Mr. Combs. Every time that Miss Richard and Mrs. Harper tried to intervene, Mr. Combs learned of the conversations and became irate. Mr. Combs screamed at the women, "Y'all just don't get in my relationship. Don't tell my Mrs. Ventura what she need to be doing. Just make money and shut the fuck up. I end artists. I shelve careers. You could be missing and you just want to die today," among other threats. Wow. Sheesh. Whoa. I believe every word. I do believe, because you know he's a control freak. He is a narcissist, and he believes that Cassie was property. So I do believe that Dawn was encouraging Cassie to leave the relationship, and I think it would get back to her, Diddy, because of Cassie. I do. I think, you know, to take the heat off of her, you know, during arguments, she'll be like, you know, everybody thinks that I should leave you. Everybody don't think I should be with you. You know, hell, Dawn and Kalina were just telling me the other day how I don't need to be with you. You know, and all of that. I think, you know, because how else did he find out? If those three women were sitting there having a conversation alone, because you know what I really think? I think Kalina was going back and telling Diddy a lot of the stuff that was going on. I think it was Cassie at times too, but I think overall it was Kalina. Because Kalina and her husband were kissing Diddy's arse. You know, he could do no wrong in their eyes. Even Kalina still says to this day that she likes Diddy, and Diddy cool. He ain't do nothing to nobody, you know, blah, blah, blah. She still got Diddy back, Kalina. Till this day. She got us back just a month or two ago. She just commented on Diddy and was telling people that he was cool. He never did nothing to her, you know, blah, blah, blah. I thought he never paid her for being in Dirty Money. That he did all type of stuff to her, and she just let it go. She just let it go. So yeah, Interscope Records enabled Mr. Combs' gender-motivated violence. In or around 2009 or early 2010, Bad Boy Entertainment, Bad Boy entered an agreement with Interscope Geffen A&M Records, Interscope. Upon information and belief, Bad Boy was paid $50 million in exchange for Bad Boy's future releases being distributed through Interscope. In doing so, Mr. Combs intended to capitalize on Interscope's significant resources and enhance the promotion and sales of Bad Boy releases, including Diddy Dirty Money's upcoming album. So they got a $50 million deal by Interscope to do music and for the current album that they were working on with Diddy Dirty Money. And again, Don never received a dime. He got a $50 million advance. $50 million advance, and didn't give them women a dime. Didn't give them a dime, not a penny or a peso, which is crazy. Anyways, okay. In the weeks and months leading up to Bad Boy Interscope deal, Mr. Combs had frequent meetings with producer and then CEO of Interscope Records, Jimmy Iovine. On one such occasion, Mr. Combs hosted a dinner at a West Hollywood, California restaurant, which Miss Richard and Mr. Harper, Lord, I keep saying Mr. Miss Harper Kalina, were required to attend. Among the guests at the dinner were celebrities like Neo, Usher, as well as Mr. Iovine. At the dinner table, Mr. Combs and Ventura had an argument in front of the dinner guests, all of them, including Usher, Neo, all of them. Mr. Combs hissed at Miss Ventura in a screaming whisper and forcefully punched her in the stomach, causing her to double over in visible pain, crying. Miss Clark escorted Miss Ventura, which was Diddy's assistant, Mrs. Ventura, out of the restaurant, and Mr. Combs remained and continued socializing with the dinner guest. At this point, Interscope Records clearly had actual knowledge that Combs was dangerous around females and that Combs was willing to brazenly batter a female in public. So Usher, Jimmy Iovine, everybody witnessed what happened to Cassie. They all sitting at the same table. It happened at the table. She hurled over the table after he hit her in the stomach. Everybody see it. Usher ain't said a word. Neo, not a word. Everybody knew. But why would Usher say something when he'd been sleeping with Diddy since he was 12? Why would he say something? That's the first man he had ever been with. Why would he say anything when Diddy has him just as manipulated? Just as manipulated. You don't think if he doing that type of stuff to Cassie, what do y'all think he was doing to Usher? Diddy is responsible for Usher's career. Whole career. Whole thing. Usher owes everything to Diddy career-wise. If not for Diddy, there would be no Usher at all. So why would he not be just as groomed, to just accept certain things? Because he ain't said a word. He's too busy over there with Russell Simmons. So, yeah, but the whole table watched. Don said nobody did nothing. Even after Miss Iovine watched Mr. Combs commit a violent assault in front of in front of numerous high-profile witnesses, the Bad Boy Interscope deal took place and remained in effect. So he could have did something then. He could have canceled it then, but he like, yep, nope, oh well, ain't got nothing to do with me. Providing Mr. Combs with immense financial rewards and enabling him to commit further acts of violence without fear of repercussions. While watching Mr. Combs openly Mrs. Ventura in front of Mr. Iovine and various celebrities and observing the powerful music industry representatives were complicit in Mr. Combs' behavior amplified Miss Richard's fears that Mr. Combs would one day harm her, and that his actions would be accepted and normalized by everyone surrounding him. Exactly. Why wouldn't she? Why wouldn't the woman think that? Why wouldn't she? Why wouldn't she? Like, didn't nobody do nothing. They just watched that happen to Cassie. Like, that's crazy. As part of the agreement between Bad Boy and Interscope heavily promoted Diddy Dirty Money's Last Train Paris album. Mr. Iovine had presented Mr. Combs with a demo of Coming Home for him to produce a song that would become a multi-platinum hit. Mr. Iovine was encouraging Mr. Combs to develop a new sound for the album, into which Interscope was investing significant resources. Miss Richard and Miss Harper and Miss Ventura all provided vocal performances for this project. Released in November 2010, the album Last Train to Paris became Diddy Dirty Money's most commercially successful project, providing vast financial rewards to both Interscope and Mr. Combs. Now again, you hear it says both to Interscope and Mr. Combs. Don and received a dime. I should have received a dime. Diddy Dirty Money, Mr. Combs subjects Mrs. Richard to labor trafficking and oppressive working conditions. In or around the fall of 2009, Diddy Dirty Money began recording the song Love Comes Down. Upon information and belief, Mr. Combs continued to use rooms that caused him to remain awake for prolonged periods of time. When he was awake, he would demand that Miss Richard and Miss Harper record in the studio, where they would spend 3 to 4 hours consecutive, in 3 to 4 consecutive days, recording without a break to eat or sleep. Mr. Combs required Miss Richard and Miss Harper to remain in his home, continuously denying the opportunity to return to their hotel rooms for breaks. The degree of control Mr. Combs exercised over Miss Richard's daily life and basic needs exacerbated the significant power imbalance and threatening atmosphere that ensured Miss Richard's compliance with his demands. So I want to get back up to this a little bit right here. Wait a second. Okay, so with him up doing Uggs and stuff all night, and all of that, he was making the women, because if you listen to the Diddy Dirty Money album and whatnot, it's them. It's Kalina and Dawn. Diddy come in, sometimes with his take that. He come in with his little parts here and there, and then sometimes he'll add verses, but overall, the women were doing all the work. Dawn and Kalina carried the group Diddy Dirty Money. Okay, he just come in, do that thing, do it. He just come in and say basic, mediocre things, while they're actually working hard, writing the music, singing the music, whatnot. Then he comes in just to critique them. So he wanted these albums. Diddy wanted all the albums done quickly. You notice that too. But making the band, all of that stuff, Day 26, all of them, they had about a month to get their album done. That is nearly like, you would think, impossible, when most artists take at least 6 months to a year. Some artists take a few years. Cardi B take a decade. Some people take a decade, to come out with an album. It just is what it is. But all of their albums were rushed. They all had to get them done quickly. Okay, Danity Kane first album came out within a month or two. Like they got it done within a month or two. Their second album, they got it done in like a month, because Danity Kane and Day 26 were both doing albums at the same time. Y'all remember that on Making the Band? They were doing albums at the same time. They were even competing with whose song gonna hit number ones and who not. Blah blah blah. It was a competition, the boys against the girls. But they all had to finish their albums at the same time. So it was Day 26 doing their first album, and it was Danity Kane doing their second album, and Danity Kane were the headliners of the tour, and Day 26 were like the opening act. Donnie Klang and others were their opening acts, right? So in the process of them coming out with these songs, Day 26 was not a fine-tuned group, and neither was Danity Kane, but he forced them. That's why he kept them up all night. He would keep them up for days, give them no breaks, nothing, forcing them to become a unit. Okay, so them gaining a sound, because a group needs to sound like one voice. You can't do that overnight. Although he picked the band, they all needed to come together and figure out how to harmonize. Harmonizing with the group is one of the hardest things a group can do, with everybody being heard as one voice, because even still as that one voice, you hear everyone's instrument at the same time. So he literally forced them, by forcing them to work hours that they shouldn't have been working 24 to 78 hours, to 72 hours and whatnot, just to force a sound. So these people were getting no rest, no food, water, nothing. But they had to keep singing, because they had only a month to get the album done. So he didn't have time to wait for them to organically find their sound. No, he forced their sound. The reason the groups ended up doing well is because of how bad they wanted it. So Day 26 first album being an amazing album, it just shows their hunger, how hard they worked for that sound. Same thing with Danity Kane. They worked hard. You look back on those episodes when he had the vocal coaches and all of that stuff, he was even overworking the vocal coaches, forcing them to force out a sound that he kept trying to hear. That's why he'd keep coming back and he'll listen to what they had came up with, and he'll be like, yeah, no. And then, he'll leave, and he'll do the same thing to Day 26, because they hadn't found their sound yet. And it takes time. to do that. But it had to happen. Usually it happens organically. He forced a sound out of them, which is crazy. He forced a sound out of them. Like, I'm like, wow, poor people, poor guys, poor girls. Let's keep going. Prolonged periods of time when he was awake, he would demand Miss Richard and Harper go to the studio and record. Okay, blah, blah. Sorry. Okay, we're remain at his home. Continuously denying the opportunity to return to their hotels for breaks. The degree of control Mr. Combs exercised over Miss Richard's daily life and basic needs exacerbated the significant power imbalance and atmosphere that ensured Miss Richard's compliance with his demands. Mr. Combs regularly left the studio and required Miss Richard and Miss Harper to stay and write verses to the songs. So again, they wrote the music and they didn't even get paid for that. They didn't get paid for performing the music. They didn't get paid for writing the music. They were doing everything while he just basically kept coming into the studio room yelling at them while he did nothing. He didn't do shit. He just kept coming in the room yelling at them, telling them to get her done, get her done, get her done. It's like, what? To imagine working under those type of conditions. Like, that's crazy. Okay. Mr. Combs regularly left the studio and required Miss Richard and Miss Harper to stay and write verses to songs. Occasionally, Miss Richard tried to leave and get something to eat or go to her hotel. Whenever Miss Richard tried to leave, Mr. Combs would call and demand, "Where the f are you? And we have an album to make." Mr. Combs frequently made threats, especially if they asked for food or rest, stating, "You're up. Wow. I don't see your fucking face. Or I don't want to see your fucking face. I make things go missing and I'll make things go away." Each time, Miss Richard returned to the studio, immediately believing that Mr. Combs was capable of following through with his threats. Mr. Combs criticized Miss Richard for being too skinny, yet denied her requests for food and demanded that she drink only peanut butter shakes. If y'all go back and pay attention to Danity Kane, they all used to drink shakes all the time. All the time. If you also go back and watch Making the Bands, they barely ate. They barely ate. Literally. All artists are supposed to have like per diems and stuff like that that takes care of, daily necessities like food, hotel stays or room and board, all of that. They didn't have none of that. They didn't have any of those things. He kept calling her skinny, but that wasn't his problem. What his problem was what he thought Dawn was ugly. He wanted Dawn to get a nose job. Because how you keep saying to somebody too skinny, but you won't let them eat? How does that make sense? How can I gain weight and put meat on my bones if you won't allow me to eat? Those type of things become a sense of normalcy. So when you get to that part in that type of phase in your life to where you're not eating, it becomes a disorder. And that type of disorder lasts lifelong. Lifelong. So I believe still to this day, Dawn has issues with food and eating. When to eat, when not to eat. Disorder. Dawn is still a petite thing still to this day. I wonder why. She did get thicker. She do like she eating. She eating well. But she's still a petite thing. Like, does she still struggle with that? Is it hard for her to eat food now because of everything she's been through? Just every time she go to order something, she hear his voice in the back of her head. "You're a bitch. You don't want this." The people don't think about the lasting effects of taking people through this type of stuff. It's a forever thing. It's not a, I'm not around him no more. I don't have to deal with it. All the stuff Cassie went through, you don't think she still deals with it on a day-to-day basis? You don't think it's hard for her to trust people? You don't think? She still go through it. You know, it still affects her in more ways than one. Yeah. But let's keep reading because I'm going to read a little bit more, and then we're going to read the rest tomorrow when I come back live in the morning because I'm going to bring other tea with it and compare other stuff. Miss Richard and Miss Harper begged for food and rest breaks, but Mr. Combs refused, making statements such as absolutely not, and this what it takes to be great. So imagine having to starve yourself to be great. Imagine having to get no sleep to be great. He didn't want them to sleep because it was a targeted time for that album to come out. And again, they were doing all the work. He did nothing with those albums. Nothing. They were doing all the work. So that's why they were not allowed to sleep or anything like that, because he was on drugs. So him being up for 3-4 days, 5 days in a row, 6-7 days in a row, that's no big deal. Don didn't do drugs. Kalina didn't do drugs. So they can't stay up 4-5 nights. They're not Usher, you know, and all those other people. Like that, they can't stay up for days, you know, recording and stuff. Like, what is wrong with you? All to feed your narrative. Also that you can eat off of this, because they did not. They did not. But we will be back tomorrow. Dawn also gets into how Diddy would order food in front of them and eat food in front of them, like these magnificent feast. You know, he would eat, and while they had nothing, and he knew that they didn't eat. He knew they didn't. They've been in the studio for the last 24 hours. And then he'd have them come sit in a meeting with him while he eating a top shelf steak, you know, all of that in front of them. And not offer them any food, not offer the chef to make them anything, you know, anything like that. He wanted them skinny, because that was the look then. He wanted them thin. He wanted Kalina skinny, and he wanted Dawn skinny. Also notice that he made sure that they looked as boyish as possible. He made sure there was no glamour to them, that they didn't have, you know, long, beautiful weave and, you know, costumes and outfits and all of that stuff. No. He kept them as janky as possible. How does Dawn go from being in a group looking like this? Okay, beautiful women, to this. Okay, the label wanted a different sound, not a different look, because as far as the label concerned, they look fine. Kalina look fine, Dawn look fine, but not to Diddy. He wasn't done, you know, bruising their egos and tearing them down and, you know, making them as insecure as possible. He wanted them boyish in the group because he didn't want to be outshined. How he felt with Danity Kane and how he felt with Day 26. He didn't like that. He didn't like that at all. This is all about me. So it's not about y'all. I'm the star, you know, is how he did. But yeah, he made sure that, because if they looked how they looked, a lot of men weren't attracted to that type of look, you know. So it made it easier for Diddy to stand out and the women disappear behind him. And Danity Kane, he couldn't stand out. All of the women were beautiful. Kalina's beautiful and Dawn's beautiful too, but he made sure to downplay their looks. He didn't want them to be looked at as beautiful. No. He wanted to be the center of attention. Even naming the group Diddy Dirty Money. Why the group couldn't just be called Dirty Money? Triple D, you know, something like that. Or Double D, Dirty Money. Why did it have to be Diddy Dirty Money? You know how, like, I am David Ruffin, and this is the Temptations. That's what it's giving. Yeah. See, Destiny's Child was called Destiny's Child. TLC was called TLC. 702 was called 702. You know, Danity Kane was called Danity Kane. Not Dawn's Danity Kane. That's not what it was called. It's not called that. He made Diddy Dirty Money to spite the other group members like Aubrey and D Woods. That's why he made that group. And it just so happened to be successful. You know, it just so happened. Because Dawn has always been a star. She was always one of the heavyweights of Danity Kane. I would say that she was the front runner of the group and even the lead singer of the group. Dawn always got verses. Dawn was always leading the choruses on the tracks. Dawn was the lead singer. You go back and listen to Danity Kane, nobody got more parts than Dawn. Nobody. Because Dawn's voice is very unique. Beautiful voice Dawn has. And it was unique. It was, she could hit notes that the other girls just really couldn't get to. She could get in a pocket that is kind of like T-Boz, you know, like from TLC. T-Boz can get in a pocket that the other bandmates couldn't get into. And then like Andrea could get into a pocket like D Woods was, I would say, would be like third runner up when it came to vocals. But I would say it would start with Dawn because Dawn has an extremely unique voice. And then I would say it would be Andrea because Andrea could get into a pocket that the other girls couldn't get into. Andrea had levels to her voice, different octaves she could hit, you know, and whatnot. The other girls, not so much. Cute voices, you know, but they wasn't standing with Dawn and Drea. And they also sang over each other a lot. Dawn and Drea, their voices were meshed a lot. Like in the song Damage and whatnot, them two, they basically ran that song. Andrea and Dawn. And that's one of their biggest songs, Damage. And throughout the whole song, you're getting Dawn and you're getting Drea. You're getting vocals from both women throughout the whole song. Throughout the whole song. And then they were playing the back and forth thing, you know, sharing parts of the song as well. So Drea was that girl vocally. Drea had it all. Drea had the look, she could dance, and the girl can sing her face off. And it was the same thing with Dawn. Dawn to me had the look, she could dance, and she could sing her face off. She sure could. That's why their voices meshed so well together. But yeah, and I don't think Diddy liked that. Diddy had no idea that Danity Kane was going to be as successful as it was. He counted them out. He did not expect that. No, he didn't. They came out of nowhere. They're that big success. He was like, oh wow, like they really, you know, they really feeling them because Danity Kane was the biggest out of making the band. Danity Kane was the biggest project, the biggest group that came from the series. And that was unexpected. That was unexpected. I don't think he thought that was going to happen. I thought he thought they were going to do all right, you know, because of the show and the promo from the show. But platinum, no. I don't think he had that in mind. But it was great because he just made even more money off of it. He made even more money off of it. But no, he definitely counted them out. Once he seen that first album was on its way to platinum, he like, oh yeah, let's get them back in the studio as soon as possible. Let's get them back in the studio because they weren't even supposed to be back into the studio. The next thing that was supposed to go on, because Diddy was supposed to let them go. They were supposed to cut that first album, and then Danity Kane was supposed to be on their own, you know, type of situation. He was going to dump them like he dumped any other group. He was known for it. But once he saw the cha-ching, he like, oh, you know, we're going to keep them around. And that's when he fully signed them to Bad Boy Records because they had like basically like a 360 deal, just so he could shoot an album out for them and get them on out the way and move on to Day 26. Because after Day 26 was formed, Danity Kane kind of came through and took over the next season because it wasn't supposed to be about them at all. It was supposed to be about Day 26, but Diddy being so greedy, he like, oh no, let's bring Danity Kane on too. We'll have them tour. They'll headline. Day 26 will open up for them, and both of them will be making albums at the same time. Because their album wasn't even like a year old, and they were already Danity Kane, and they had a successful album. They were already in the studio again. It's like, why are they back in the studio? You usually do this with artists that flopped. You know, they're great. You know, they have a talent. They have a lot of potential, but maybe we just picked a lot of the wrong song choices or producers for the beats. You know, why not? Let's get them back to the drawing board and let's try this again. You know, you try to get them back in the studio as soon as possible. But when you have a successful group or a successful artist, then you ride that wave. you ride the wave. You wait a couple years. You let them go on tour. After they go on tour, you have them drop some singles, a few singles, and see if the people still feeling them, making sure they still are. And then you get them back in the studio and have them cook. Because then you can actually profit off of the album. You can actually eat off of it. Royalties, all of that. But no, he did not allow that. He did not allow that at all. He got rid of them as soon as possible because he was jealous. He was jealous of Danity Kane. He absolutely was. Yes, he was. So we'll break that down more tomorrow. I love you guys. I love the group Danity Kane. So I'm going to be breaking some stuff down about them tomorrow too. Where they are now and whatnot. And then we will finish reading her lawsuit and we will break it down as we go through. Thank you all so much for joining me. Please hit the like, please hit the like, please hit the like. Shout out to Corey for the super sticker. She says, excellent commentary. Thank you so much, sweetheart. And shout out to Queen T. She says, late for the start, on time for the tea, on the month. Absolutely. Shout out to you, sweetheart. We will be back tomorrow, I promise. After book club, we will be back tomorrow and we will finish breaking this down. And again, I appreciate all of you for being here. You know, I love you guys. I love you guys. And I will talk to y'all on the flip side. Okay? Alrighty. Love you guys. Shout out to y'all. We love you, Dawn. I love Dawn. That's my baby.